Okay, well, it's been a little while since I've had much to say, so I thought I'd drop a little bit of book info on you this evening. I got 3 new books here recently. Actually, I got 2 new books recently, and one newer one about a couple months ago. The 2 new books I got, I think, for under $3, and one of them is called The Bible and Islamic Perspective, and it has Jesus, so the Bible, Islamic Perspective, Jesus. And I'm going to read a short section of it tonight to you. The second book I got was The Faith of Our Fathers, which is a plain exposition and vindication of the church founded by our Lord Jesus Christ, by James Cardinal Gibbons, the Archbishop of Baltimore. So this is basically a apologetic volume for the Catholic Church. So I'm not going to read any of that tonight. I may do that later, another time. I think I will also at a later time do the third book because Passover is coming up pretty rapidly. It is the Mishnah Elucidated. I think I've read some of that to you all previously. And it is a phrase-by-phrase simplified translation with basic commentary. And so I thought we might do some tractate Peshahim later on. So not tonight, but I thought you might be interested in those as well. So I thought I'd read a little bit of this book of the biblical perspective of Jesus in the Bible from the Islamic perspective. And I am in the introduction section, Jesus, Son of God or Prophet. And let's see, what major section is this in? Well, that's the major section that it's in. And this is part B of that section. It's called The Titles of Jesus in Christian Sources. So it may be appropriate at this time to consider the principal titles by which Jesus is known in the New Testament and the evolution of their significance to the early Christians. Messiah, number 1. We have already had several occasions to mention the messianic expectations of the Jews. The word Messiah means anointed. Originally, it referred to the divinely sanctioned Israelite monarchy, whose kings, beginning with Saul, were anointed, in the Hebrew Messiah, or Mashua, and this was a cognate of the Arabic Masih, M-A-S-I-H, I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhat correctly, which with consecrated oil. With the lapse of the house of David in 586 BCE and the ensuing Babylonian captivity, hopes for a return to Palestine and a renewed independent Jewish state centered upon a restoration of the house of David in the person of the anointed representative of that time. The return of the Jews to Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the temple earned Cyrus the title of Messiah, as Isaiah shows, but this act did not restore the house of David. Cyrus reestablished the temple services, but without the restoration of the royal house of David, with its association with the Solomonic temple of Jerusalem that had become the symbol of unified Yud-He-Vav-He worship. They use they write out the word, and I don't say it except in prayer, etc. And pretty much don't ever say it out loud. I will use the first 3 letters of it at times. The restoration of the Jewish independence by the Jewish Hasmoneans did nothing to lessen these expectations, as they did not fulfill the requirements for messiahship. Their fall and the direct Roman rule that followed worked only to increase Jewish excitement and anticipation for the imminent appearance of the true Messiah. When the temple was once again rebuilt, this time by Roman client king and descendant of Esau Herod, but still without the restoration of the Davidic line and Jewish independence. Messianic expectations became more sweeping and excitement mounted. Not only would the Messiah restore Israel, but he would also defeat all of its enemies and establish the supremacy of Israel among the nations of the world. Inevitably, this belief became colored with the eschatological, can't ever say that word, belief of foreign, i.e. Persian origin, the defeat of forces of evil, and the end of the temporal world. Judaism, this is just an offshoot or off-take, sidebar. Judaism is not bipolar, so to speak. We believe that God is one, and that everything in the world is part of that one. And so the defeat of the forces of evil, the devil, etc., really is not a subject in Jewish parlance. Nevertheless, the renewed temple had satisfied one ambition of the Jews. Now they waited for satisfaction of the other, an independent state ruled by a king of the Davidic line. By the time Jesus began his teaching, several men had already risen against Rome, and claiming messiahship gained wide support, a support that usually dissipated quickly upon the defeat of the claimant, for the true Messiah could not lose. And this is still a precept of Judaism today. The Messiah will die a natural death, yes, but he will not fail to carry out the messianic mission before his death. The true Messiah was to be sent by God to restore Israel to a prominent or superior position among the nations of the world. He would usher in a golden age of godliness, peace, and righteousness. For the Qumran community, there were to be two messiahs, one priestly and one royal, but this does not seem to have been the popular understanding in the period we are discussing. A qualification was that he had to be of the house of David. It was because of this qualification that the genealogies asserting that Jesus was a descendant of David, and the infancy story locating his birthplace in Bethlehem, the house of bread, Bethlehem, the birthplace of David, were inserted into the Gospels. This human Messiah would be the founder of a glorious temporal Jewish kingdom based upon the fulfillment of the Torah. The divine Messiah, whose death would cleanse the world of original sin and usher in a new age, either celestial or terrestrial or both, was the creation of Paul and his group in emulation of the mystery cults then fashionable in the Roman Empire. It was against this backdrop of feverish religious expectation and political turmoil that John the Baptist, who would actually be John the Baptizer, Jesus of Nazareth, not Bethlehem, and Paul, among others, appeared and carried out their missions. How these elements affected and shaped the ministry of Jesus and our perceptions of it will be dealt with more extensively in the stories about the messengers of God and his chief propagandist, Paul. In the Quran and traditions, this term is used as a title attached to Jesus, sometimes almost as a proper name, just as Christians use Christ instead of the more accurate, the Christ. And I think many people think that Christ was Jesus' last name. Nonetheless, this Islamic usage seems to recognize the special mission as the anointed of God, and he figures prominently in Muslim eschatological scenarios and in the writings of the Sufis. The Arabic equivalent, Masih, M-A-S-I-H, is familiar to all Muslims. Mashiach, M-A-S-I-H-I, is an exact equivalent of the English Christian and is more common in Persian than the other term Nusrani or Nazarene used by speakers of Arabic. And then it moves on. The next title is Son of God. So I hope you enjoyed that. I found it interesting. Sorry, I threw a few subtitles in there just to kind of clarify a few things here and there. I think it's an interesting book. I think it'll be a good, interesting read. Um, and I'm going to get into the other books as well. So hopefully you'll join me for those. Have a good evening. Thank you for joining me, and shalom.